Hello and welcome to this series of how-to videos for people who are venturing into the hobby of scale model railways, or are perhaps picking it up again after a long break. I got back into it myself after a gap of 50+ years. We'll start quite literally from the ground up, and I would invite your input and any questions you may have. After all, a model railway is constantly evolving. In this part, we'll be looking at the construction of frames, and a look at the most commonly available materials to use as the baseboards for your layout. At the heart of every successful model railway lies the frame and the baseboard. Without a firm foundation, nothing can be built, and most railway layouts are designed to be permanent fixtures in a spare room, garage, shed, or even in the loft, although other considerations come into the planning there. I'll be using my own layout, which is called the Mabel End Model Railway for this series of videos, which is built inside a 10 by 8 foot wooden pent roof garden shed. Negotiations with the boss took place over the span of several months to finally get the shed, although it was a compromise from the original application for a 12 by 10 foot shed with a pitch roof. The shed is constructed from pressure-treated posts with 12 mm tongue and groove shiplap cladding, an 11 mm oriented strand board roof, and the same for the floor. I laid an additional layer of 13 mm marine ply on top of the OSB floor from 2 sheets of 8 by 4. The door is 2 foot 5 inches wide, and there are 3 square styrene windows at shoulder height. The shed was built in October, not the best month of the year, and while the construction of the framework and shelves was going on inside, it took almost 3 months for the humidity level to drop to 44% as it dried, which is ideal for relative comfort and health. Having the door open on warm days, even when I wasn't working on the layout, helped, and I've not had to run a dehumidifier to regulate the humidity level. I used silicone to seal the frame where it met the sides, roof and floor of the shed, and then insulated the walls with double bubble aluminium foil sheets, and sealed the gaps with aluminium foil tape. My thoughts were that it was going to become something of a hot house during the summer, so I didn't insulate the ceiling, and with the styrene windows not being openers, the door would be the only way to ventilate it. It was then time to mark out the footprint of the framework, and decide on the height of the baseboard for the layout. I knew that I wanted to incorporate a workbench and storage area for repairs and testing of locos, some kit bashing and soldering and so on, so I built it from the ground up. I used 2 by 1 inch plain timber to form a skirting to stop any small parts from rolling underneath when they fell off the workbench. I bought some half sheets of reclaimed 24 mm marine ply to form the bottom shelf. It was heavy stuff to move around, but was the cheaper option to cutting up new 13 mm sheets of plywood. I built the framework off that with 2 by 2 inch plain timber, and continued with the reclaimed ply to make another shelf, because it was nice and sturdy, and then another level over that, which made the workbench. Just note that plain timber is smaller than the labels say because they are often based on the unsawn timber sizes. This put the workbench at desk height, which is comfortable to work at from a stool or a chair. The plain timber legs were sealed with a matte varnish, and the shelf surfaces were painted just to make them uniform in color. The jury always seems to be out in railway model groups and forums when it comes to agreeing the best material for a baseboard, and it's often down to personal choice, availability, and budget. MDF, chipboard, sundealer board, or plywood are the primary candidates depending on the modeling scale and environment the layout is in. Let's look at them a little closer. MDF, which stands for medium density fiberboard, is an engineered product made by breaking down hardwood or softwood residuals into wood fiber, and combining it with wax and a resin binder, and forming it into panels by applying high temperature and pressure. It is generally denser than plywood, and doesn't contain any knots or rings, which makes it more uniform. However, it must be sealed as it is prone to warp or expand in humid environments, and it may swell and break when saturated with water. Screwing into the edge of a board will generally cause it to split. One primary concern is the use of formaldehyde resins, which are commonly used to bind the fibers together. When cut, a large quantity of dust particulate is released into the air which may contain formaldehyde, which is a known human carcinogen. Chipboard is a relatively low-cost alternative to plywood, and is available in similar thicknesses, but because of its weight will need a good solid frame to support it. It will need sealing, but it's not suitable for smaller layouts because of its weight, and when it comes to laying track, it's very hard to drive pins into. Sun dealer board is made from highly compressed recycled paper, and is easy to cut and drill. It is used in offices and schools as pinboards, internal wall cladding, and as freestanding screens or as partitions. When used as a baseboard, providing that it is supported with wooden battens, it will remain flat under normal loading, but given that it's made from paper, it is not the best thing to be making the baseboard for your railway layout from because it may absorb water, which will cause warping, but it's worth considering if your layout is in an environment of ambient temperature, or is required to be portable. Plywood has been widely adopted as the material of choice for the construction of model railway baseboards for its high strength relative to its thickness. The most popular thicknesses are 9 mm for N-gauge and 12 mm for double-O-gauge layouts. They must be sealed both sides and along the edges to prevent splintering. A 50/50 mix of PVA glue and water is just right for this, and it will need bracing along the edges and at intervals with battens underneath to prevent sagging and for additional strength. Plain timber measuring 2 by 1 inches is ideal for this, fixed into place with PVA woodworking glue and secured with countersunk screws from the top of the baseboard. It's worth considering drilling 2 or more 6 to 8 mm holes in the battens beforehand, depending on your layout plan, as they can serve to hold the bus wires in line when it comes to the wiring stage later on. A standard 8x4 sheet of plywood is a good size to work with if it's the largest you have the space to accommodate and want a freestanding layout with all-round access. When considering the size of your layout, especially if it's butted into a corner, keep in mind that you'll need to be able to reach the farthest point without leaning over too much. A good measure is the length of your arm minus a couple of inches. You'll realize this when the scenics are all in place. You'll also find that apart from inside tunnels, the farthest places of the layout are where derailments are most likely to occur. This phenomenon comes under the law of sod. Some modelers choose a modular approach and build their layouts in 3 or 4 foot sections using wall-mounted battens to support one side of the baseboard. I've also seen a few modelers who have their baseboards hinged to the battens in order to raise them for access to the wiring, but given that they have to clear everything that isn't glued down off the layout in order to do that, and it could still incur drop-offs from the scenic such as trees and loose static grass, I won't be touching on that method. So back to the Mabel end layout. The baseboard is at shoulder height. This is a comfortable height for both working on and for viewing when standing, as we'll see next time. In part 2 I'll be talking about using caulk as an underlay on baseboards, track plans and laying track. Whilst this was a foundation video, I'd be happy to read your comments. A model railway is always evolving, and advice from other modelers is always welcome, and can often save a lot of time and costly mistakes. Thank you for watching.